What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to one of, in my estimation, one of the most innovative, crafty, upstart wrestlers that I've seen in quite a while. And there's been many, but he's the one and only Jack Cartwheel. Jack, what's going on?
Thank you, sir. I'm good. What an intro. That was awesome. Your graphics and stuff, that was sick. Did you make that?
No, absolutely not. And I'm free flowing of information in terms of like if anybody wanted to start a podcast or whatever. Like I use StreamYard. It streams on Facebook and YouTube. That's that. And I use Fiverr. That only cost me about $20 on Fiverr. Fivrr. So it's awesome. So it's a haven for like if you need something done and you need just like a freelancer to kind of work something up, everything from artwork to like business proposals you can do on Fiverr. Hey, Fiverr, I mean, there's a plug. So if you want to sponsor somebody, I'm just saying, if you're looking for podcasts, I mean, According to Woods is your deal. But if you're looking for wrestlers, Jack Cartwheel Cartwright, that's who we want to sponsor, because I think innovation is what you guys both do well. So, man, so there you go.
Thank you. Yeah, getting sponsored, that'd be cool. That's like just a big part of wrestling. If you get a big enough following, you can make money just from sponsors. That'd be cool.
Yeah, and I deal both in like MMA and pro wrestling, and sometimes like a fighter or pro wrestler will have a shirt, and you love the wrestler, you love the athlete behind it, but the merch might not be the thing you like, right? So, and maybe that person might have done it themselves, or paid like maybe a couple $100 to have somebody work it out, right? So with Fiverr, it's just like there's no excuse. You can have awesome gear to sell to your fans, and make a little bit of coin, and not just settle for the mundane.
Yeah. So my senior year of high school is when I like started training for wrestling, and I went to my digital art teacher and I asked him if he could make like a little logo for me, which is what I have for like shirts that I'm still making. So they'll be out soon though. That'll be cool. Yeah.
I mean, I can't wait, and to rock some Jack Cartwheel gear. That'd be absolutely phenomenal, But dude, I mean, like you said, like you started training in your senior year of high school. When I was in my senior year of high school in Inglewood, California, I was like, maybe I'm going to the Air Force or what have you. I thought I was going to get a tremendous growth spurt. My mom is part Fijian, right? And my dad, all Fijian. And then my dad is like American descendant of slaves and 6'4". So I was like, I've got aunts, women in my family that are like 6 foot on both sides. And I was like, maybe I'm going to get that growth spurt at 21 and whatever, and, go wrestle in Japan and blow out my knees. And then, after a long career and possibly settle down to a commentary position somewhere in North America. Well, genetics are fun, only standing about 5'9", not the wherewithal to kind of hit the mats, as they say. So, dude, I mean, what was it in your senior year of high school that led you to get into professional wrestling?
Well, so I would always do gymnastics in the wintertime and springtime. So I would always play football in the fall, and I'd go to gymnastics from like winter through spring and like most of summer, and then go back to football. And I think my sophomore year of high school was my last time doing gymnastics that year, because I hurt my back and it just wasn't getting better. And it was a case of like spondylitis, I think is what it was called. Basically, I had two vertebrae in my back pinching a nerve, and it just wouldn't go away until like I stopped gymnastics. So then I stopped gymnastics, and then junior year I did amateur wrestling, and I didn't love it. It was I liked the grind of it, but I started at like 180, like weighing 180, and then left weighing like 150, and it was just right before my senior year of football too. So it was also like I just couldn't risk like losing that much weight, so much cardio, so much stuff. So then senior year, when it came to winter and springtime, I didn't really have anything to do, right? Because I wasn't doing gymnastics, I wasn't doing amateur wrestling, and then football was over. So I was like, you know what, I'll try this out. So I went to a couple practices, loved it a lot. Went to a show with my trainers Scoot and Sir Samurai. So it was like my first week of wrestling, and like I went to the show. Oh, this is actually a great story. Can I tell the story real quick?
Yes, please. That's what we're here to do.
So it was like a week and a half into wrestling, and it just so happened to be SPW's shows. They have like a show every third Sunday of the month. So it was after an extreme match, and the ring was full of like clutter and stuff. So they're like, hey Jack, like go hop in the ring and like sweep it all out. And I'm like, all right. So I get in the ring and I'm sweeping everything, and the crowd starts chanting like sweep, sweep, sweep. And I was like all nervous because like I just kind of didn't want to be seen, right? I just wanted to like sweep, do it, and get out of there. And so to make them feel like to react back, I hit a backflip, right? Everyone's chanting sweep, sweep. So I hit a backflip, right? And I was like, yeah, that's right. Like I'm not just sweeping, like I'm here to do something. And then they started chanting title shot, which was cool because it was like out of nowhere, which was really cool. But yeah, that was the first like independent show that I've been a part of, was just like I was sweeping the mats and then hit a backflip because they were trying to punk me while sweeping. So I was punked them back by hitting a backflip. So yeah.
I think it's great, right? Because I mean, there's like seminal moments where like, you know, you kind of, I don't want to say arrive because obviously you're still young in your journey, but I mean, you know, like if you're a jazz musician, you play steps. If you're a blues musician, you play the crossroads, right? Like those are just like seminal things. Or if you're like I don't know, like you know, an improv comedian, you essentially will, you know, go up and do an open mic, right? There's certain rites of passage, right? And whether your trainers knew it or not, you know, and the Scoot that you mentioned, Scoot who?
Scoot Robertson.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, so Samurai's, you know, and then Scoot might have just like, you know, like okay, we just need him to sweep the ring. Whether they knew it or not, I mean, they might have given birth to like one of their newest homegrown stars, you know. And I don't know if that was like, you know, something that they had done to maybe like, let's see what this kid could do, or it was just out of necessity. But sometimes those things, you know, obviously like the Four Horsemen get informed, right? They didn't have enough TV time and whatever, and they needed all four of those guys, the Andersons, you know, Tully and Rick, to kind of do a promo, right? And so they just did it together and just combined the time. And, you know, and some of those, like, especially in pro wrestling, some of the best reactions are something that are just like completely out of the blue. Like, you know, and it's completely necessity, but it becomes gold. And when you got it, you just savor it. So what was the next step?
So I think I had like my first couple matches were rumbles, you know, something that you can kind of just fit in the mix, but you can also do something, you know. So I was in, actually I have my book right here with all my matches in it. So I was, just to give like the specific dates and stuff, you know. But I think my first one was like on April 20th. There was like a Uglies Royal Rumble, and it was like just a Royal Rumble. And this is another good story, actually. So
yes,
it was a Royal Rumble, and the story of the match was everyone's having like a normal Royal Rumble, and then there was these two behemoths named Sin and Paul, who came out and started like throwing everyone out of the ring. And Sin grabs me, and he's like, "I'm gonna give you a power bomb." And I was like, "I've never taken a power bomb. Like, I don't know what to do." And he was like, "Don't worry, I got you." And he just threw me up and like threw me down. And I knew in my head I would be perfectly fine because, you know, I know how to take a bump. I understood what a power bomb was, but it was just weird to have it be given to me on the first time during my first match out of the blue like that without like taking it before. So that was an interesting experience.
My goodness. Now, I mean, is that the Sid that we know, like former WWF and WCW champion Sid, or different Sid?
Sin,
Oh, Sin.
SYNN. I know he has a different work first name, but his last name's Sin. Yeah,
Wow. But
he
even
wrestled
still, I mean,
a couple weeks ago.
well, I mean, even still, that's still a precarious deal. I mean, again, you've watched it, you know, you've seen it done, but like it's
Hmm.
being seen done. Like you can see like a fail video, right? But like you eat it, like face plant into the dirt, like it's a completely different thing. Let alone like somebody saying like, no, this is exactly what you're gonna do. Because part of the fail is like you don't know what's gonna happen. There's a bit of like spontaneity, right? That happens, and you just kind of do what you will. But like he's actually letting you know, like this is what I'm gonna do, and just
Hmm.
be prepared. Like it's completely different.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, then some rumbles, some tag matches, and then I finally got into like singles matches by around summer, and probably like I had a pretty long match with my trainer Sir Samurai as like the first singles match at like a show. So that was cool. He took care of me. It was awesome. It was a great story, a good way to start off my career. So yeah.
Now, did the crowd in attendance know the relationship, the student teacher type scenario?
I think so. I think they did. I think that they've seen me as security, like at the show. So then they would be like, "Oh wait, that was the guy that was in security last month. Now he's in the show." And I think that's the way that we run it at SPW Training Academy. And we'd have like your guys who are training as security, and then as they progress, as they get better, they stop dropping out of security, start getting into the shows, and as new students come in, they become the security. So, yeah.
That's a rite of passage, and again, a good way to break in, right? I mean, um, I think like Jim Ross and even Harley Race to an extent, they started out as referees, right?
Oh,
And that's like and you learn the business kind of from the closest spot that you could be,
mm,
in the ring, right, without actually taking a bump, right? Like, or
mhm.
even if you're like Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman, they started out taking pictures and stuff like that. And look at
Oh,
where,
wow. I
yeah,
didn't. Okay.
yeah. So I mean, Jim Cornette was like the Louisville, because he's based in Kentucky. So like somewhere in Louisville, the Louisville Gardens. I want to say, don't quote me on it, but somewhere in Louisville where Memphis Wrestling used to come to town with Jerry Lawler, and he started out taking pictures. And same thing with Paul Heyman. If you look at old like WWF, footage, around the time of like Bruno Sammartino and what have you, you'll see a young, full head of hair Paul Heyman.
Wow. That's sick. That's really cool. Dang. Yeah.
So, I mean, how long after you started training was that first match with Sir Samurai?
The one with Sir Samurai was about 6 to 7 months, but the first Rumble was about 3 to 4. So yeah, it was cool. A lot of basic stuff. When it's so interesting how after it happened, I was so stoked, like, oh, that was a great match. And when I would watch it, I like can't even watch it back now. It's like, oh, dude, what, you put the wrong knee down when you did a snapmare, or like you went the wrong way with a clothesline, or you didn't communicate well in this part. And it's crazy how something that just happened, you're like, oh, you're stoked about it, but also like you have to watch it back. You have to understand like what you need to do better next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, those nuances, whether it be pro wrestling, whether it be like MMA or even jiu-jitsu, right? Like you can be in a knee bar, right? And
Mhm.
you're okay until you're not okay. And like ligaments all throughout your knee just like tear like, spaghetti, like dry spaghetti, right? So I
Right.
love how, and that's why, combat sports, anything contested in a ring and a cage, those are some of the most compelling stories ever told by man, because it is something that, again, incremental like moments are like where perfection and utter despair kind of lie. Like it's the
Yeah.
middle of the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I mean, I know nobody really feels ready, right? I mean, you could have 3 months, 3 years, 300 years, and I don't know, you don't get some. I mean, at some point, you get a little bit better, you progress or whatever. But like the
Mhm.
first one, right? Being it that was the Rumble. Um, Talk to me about that, because I mean, you obviously trained in a ring, right? But actually competing in front of a crowd, that's a completely different dynamic. And like, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So we would do like practice matches. So I guess I was kind of ready for like a match, but definitely with the crowd, it's a totally different aspect, and that's something that I'm still working on, learning how to work. Like, so you can have good matches, you can do a bunch of flips, but until you understand the way that the audience would react to each and every single thing that you do, and the flow of the match, I'm still working on how to do that. So like it's a different aspect. And right now today, like when we do tapings, like at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, or at GCF or at East Bay, like when we do tapings, I'm sure you've heard it all the
Yeah.
time here. Like, now that there is an audience, it's a totally different game. You can't understand what's working. You don't know how to adapt to something that's going on, because you don't know if it's working or not. Yeah.
No, 100%. No, 100%. And that's why, I mean, again, attention to detail. I actually love, what your trainers taught you, kind of learning from the ground up as security. And, I think Antonio McKee, who just had his son AJ win at Bellator, fantastic submission win for him, putting at like 17-0, something crazy like that. But, if you're a student, in MMA, and he has a promotion. He works with a promotion in Long Beach, California, and the amateur fighters are essentially, if they're not fighting on that card, they're security.
Yeah.
So again, you learn aspects of the game that help you out infinitely, and I really love, especially from a storyline standpoint, what New Japan does with their young lions, right? Where they have them working matches, after training in the dojos, and, paying your dues and everything, and working cold matches, undercard matches, and you're given only like 3 to 5 moves. That's your base. But I
Yeah.
mean, the way that you differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack, because there might be 3 or 4 other young boys, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, training or competing at the very same card. So how you string those, the drop kick, Boston Crab, those things, how you string them together, that's all unique to you and how you interpret it, but it's still the same, right? Like you can't surpass that, which I think it makes you even more of a star in terms of the fans, because like once you go on your excursion and learn different styles and work different territories, like you were saying, learning how
Yeah.
to work in front of a crowd, which is absolutely crucial, and then you come back and, you have the fan base that saw you, in your case, as a security, that
Mhm.
saw you as a young boy, that saw you, and again, New Japan, after the young boys essentially wrestle their match, the first or second match on the card, you'll see them in their, New Japan gear,
Yeah.
and they're the security. They're the ones that put ice water, behind the competitor's back. So it's just, I think there's a cool storytelling that, especially with a promotion or promotions such as like Championship Wrestling from Hollywood or what have you, that you get to see this person kind of cut their teeth, and then when they like I said, like right from your first kind of interaction with the fan base to sweep the ring, they were already telling you a title. They were telling your promoters title shot. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, wrestling's crazy like that. I think I've legitimately had more matches that I wasn't supposed to have matches that I've actually been booked for. Like when you saw me on Primetime Live, I wasn't scheduled for that show, right? Like if you look at the card, like I'm not on there, nor is Robert Baines, the guy that I wrestled. But for the couple weeks before that, I was doing airport runs, picking up the superstars who are on that show for the show, for like paying my dues. So I picked up like Thunder Rosa from the airport, which was really cool. I picked up James Storm, which was really cool. I picked up Chris Dickinson, Will Allday. So like I would just be picking them up back and forth. And I think on that third week that I was doing it, they asked me, they said like, hey, do you have your gear just in case if like the show's going short, because it's a live show, it's a live pay-per-view, they would need to fit in the time. So I was like, yeah, of course I got my gear. That's like the number one thing, always have your gear. So yeah, that's how I got that opportunity. I was not supposed to wrestle on Primetime Live, but I was there. Something that my football coach always would stress is the best ability is availability. So there was no other wrestlers there, so I took that spot, and now it's done a lot for me, like to wrestle on an NWA show, to wrestle on a United Wrestling Network show. It did a lot, but yeah, it's just that it wasn't planned. We knew that if it so happened that a lot of the other matches in the card went short, they would need like a 5 to 6, 7 minute match to fill in that gap. And it just so happened that they needed it as it was going on. So we were ready.
I love it. And, shout out to Dave Marquez, not just with the United Wrestling Network, but, his, early iterations. I mean, the way that you just described, like I was thinking about, the person who broke him in St. Louis, the great Harley Race, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And, you think about it, that's what he used to do when he was training with the Zbyszko brothers, back in the day. He essentially drove, people who were coming into the territory or not. There's a fantastic story of like Happy Humphrey, who is one of like, he was like at the time, he was like the world's like fattest man. Like he's the world's heaviest man, and he got into wrestling, right? So Harley Race would have to go and pick up Happy Humphrey and drive him from town to town because he couldn't fit, in a regular seat. So essentially what would happen is they would stop off for the night, but Happy Humphrey couldn't like bathe in the regular shower. So on the side of the road, and I've got Harley Race's book, like really like in my bookshelf, I'm looking at it, but there's a funny story where like Harley actually has to get a water hose, right?
What?
And in the nude, Happy Humphrey, and like scrub him down, like with like a quartz brush and what have you, right? But like those are the stories, right? And Harley got to pick, Happy Humphrey and whoever came through the town, their brain, because obviously, especially now, right? Like Thunder Rosa, former NWA Women's Champion, Chris Dickinson, who I've had on the show, a friend of the show, who's wrestled on like literally everything from championship wrestling from Hollywood to Bloodsport, and I mean he's like fucking A. Like I couldn't say too much, and like fucking James Storm, my goodness, former world champion, the Cowboy, and it's just like that's what you do, and there's long car rides, and that just shows like I love that Marquez grew up under that auspice of Harley Race and the old school way of doing things, because that's something that you do. Like you have, that's how you learn the business by to talk to people that are, and this is not just in pro wrestling, but this is in like an important aspect of life where like you look at people that not are on the same level, not lower than you, so to speak, but you look for people that are more successful than you and see what you can emulate in terms of their patterns, learn from their stories, pros and cons, because everybody's got them. And you just, and the best way to learn, and you're a student yourself in many ways, right? And everything in your life right now, you're a student of the game. But
Yeah.
that's the way you learn. The best tuition is basically paying your dues, riding into cars, with veterans of the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like I had like a 20-minute elevator pitch to get to know like whoever was in the car. I think Allison Kay I picked up also, and Nicole Savoy. So yeah, it felt like I had like a 20-minute elevator like pitch in order for me to like have a good conversation, in order for them to remember me for whenever. You never know when that'll be important or good. Like if I show up at something and Allison Kay happens to be there and she recognizes me, so hey, like, didn't you drive me that one time? I'm like, yeah, like we've met before, which is a good like stronghold at any company, to have somebody there that would know you. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And again, it's what, especially in combat sports, because it's almost, I mean, it's probably the greatest paradox, that you can have, right? And so you're adversaries, but you want to, take care of each other. You don't want each other to get like, long-standing, lifelong injury, right? Like, whether
Mhm.
that be pro wrestling, of all the MMA and jiu-jitsu fights and stuff that I've seen, throughout my career, whether it be on TV or live, my favorite part is after, when that final bell rings and literally, like, you see the coaches hug, the two people that were like literally like throwing the kitchen sink at each other are
Mhm.
hugging and embracing, and you did this and laughing about it, and like literally like their faces are falling off. But it's just like, that's so special, because
Yeah.
there's nobody, not your closest, relative, spouse, your best friend, whatever. They're not going to know what you went through in that moment, like the person sitting or standing right on the opposite side of the ring or the cage from you. So
Yeah.
it's cool. And if you have that little nuance of like, hey, I kind of know you, or a veteran acknowledge you, right? Because in a locker room, which there's always like that unspoken locker room etiquette and what you
Yeah.
should and shouldn't do, but you
Uh,
don't know you're doing it until you actually do it, and you kind of like dug a hole for yourself, and you kind of have to dig your way out. But if you're in a sea of like six other unfamiliars in that locker room, and you have
mhm.
one veteran that kind of knows your name, or at least knows your face. You're that guy, or you're
There-
that girl. I mean, it could mean like infinite, possibilities. Just like with the primetime live situation, where maybe that show also is running short, and you've got your gear.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. That's also how I got into championship wrestling from Hollywood, when they gave me a match with Clark Connors, which was really cool, which was awesome, on championship wrestling from Hollywood. And when I went there that day, like Dave Marquez knew that I was there, but I wasn't knew that I was coming, but like I wasn't booked on it. I just knew a couple other people who were booked, and I actually drove. That was when I moved from Sacramento to Orange County down here. So that was literally my first day. I drove straight from Orange County to where straight from Sacramento to where I'm staying now. Slept that night, and then in the morning went to championship wrestling from Hollywood just to show face, just to go out there. And that's when they asked me if I had any gear that didn't say Cartwheel, because I guess they didn't like the name Cartwheel. So, and I wasn't at I'm not at the point where I would have an issue of over my name, meaning that I wouldn't wrestle. Like I was like, oh yeah, cool. Call me something else. Like as long as I'm wrestle, I'm down. So that's why I'm Cartwheel in some places and then Cartwright at most United Wrestling Network places.
Well, and again, showing your versatility of the performer, right? Because, and that's a parable, right? Don't just, you know, do the thing that you envision yourself doing, right? Like the
Yeah.
name, the gear, or whatever. Have some backup, right?
Yeah.
Because, obviously the promoter will have something completely different in mind for you, and that, like, just that pair of black or red tights. You
Yeah.
know, it's the basic white, like that you would get on high spots. That could be, that could lead to one of like the biggest runs or biggest paydays of your life, or a
Yeah.
payday, period.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially like if you were to do like extra work for WWE or something, like if you were to do a squash match, I know that for sure they don't usually use the like pro wrestlers like normal work name. They would usually just change it for like a one-time thing, So it's definitely important to just have like a basic black set or basic red set, for whatever.
Yeah, I think the craziest kind of scenario that comes to mind is like the I think the last run of tapings that they had here in LA at Staples, pre-pandemic, and like you know Fidel Bravo basically gets, he gets a full-on entrance with, his name on the Titantron
Oh,
and
hell yeah.
everything like that, right? And on 205 Live. But then Eli Everfly, right? They call him something completely different, but he gets a win over the Miz.
Huh. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean and that happened, but you just never know. But those are like that's two kind of separate but equal scenarios where that can happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So now I'm training down in Orange County with Mariachi Loco and Lil Cholo at the Lucha Homies Wrestling School. So I'm down here now.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, and my goodness, talk about two guys who I absolutely think the world of is Little Cholo and Mariachi Loco, because I mean, it's crazy the amount of experience that those two both have, right? And especially like Cholo, right? I think he just celebrated his like 20th year in the business or
Yeah.
something of that. Yeah, and I mean, I saw him probably the first time in like the Central Valley, like working, like I want to say like Vacaville type, like and even like some shows in Bakersfield. Can't remember. I think it was like Pro Wrestling Revolution, right? That was the promotion, and that was like, man, I was just like, I love the look, and I mean, he was one of those. Now it's kind of a caveat of like lucha strong style, but he was doing exactly that. He was different than like Osei. I mean, when you think about it, he was cutting his teeth when like Eddie and Chavo Guerrero were kind of killing it on
Yeah.
SmackDown, right? So he did. I mean, he did something completely different and kind of embraced that cholo whatever. And I dare I say it, I even want to say that like maybe Hernandez from Impact Wrestling, he might have taken some liberties, because when Hernandez, the first time I saw him in like the early 2000s, he was wrestling as Hot Stuff Hernandez, right? Like this kind of white meat baby face, kind of shaved head. He's still super max, but he didn't have that like Cholo, what have you, that he would later become known for, right? But I
Yeah.
think he guarded that from Cholo, because I remember seeing Cholo doing it a little bit first. But I mean, how instrumental has moving down here and training under the learning tree of those two gentlemen, like how has that evolved your career?
Oh, it's awesome. It's I've done a lot more lucha stuff lately with there's some shows in Laguna Hills. There's actually a show tomorrow that I'm in, so that'll be really cool. And as of right now, they're still going, it's still going on, but you never know what might happen with everything getting canceled. But yeah, it's a lot of lucha stuff, totally different style, a lot of more rolls instead of bumps, a lot like different sequences, and the way that they run their camp is really cool because we have a whole variety of people with different experience, but somehow the way that they run it, everyone still gets a kick out of it. Like they'll be teaching something that even people who've been doing it for a couple years are learning the same thing, where people who are just now joining are learning the same thing, and oblivious of who has more experience, you're still learning the same thing, and it's new to both people, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And again, training, indicative of two tenured vets of the business, like I want to say like 30 years of experience between them both. So just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Wait, real quick. I need to make sure that my computer's charging. It's about to die.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. So I just want to get into your influences, right? Because obviously having that football background, having that gymnastics background, even the amateur wrestling background, right? But I mean, when did pro wrestling kind of enter your psyche?
It was really recently. It's pretty interesting. I wasn't one of those kids who grew up watching wrestling even. I didn't really watch it until I was probably like 15, which or maybe a little bit younger than that. But there was definitely a gap. I think I watched a little bit when I was 12 to 13 with I remember what happened was it was like a late night like sleepover or something. We turned on the TV and we didn't have like a guide. It was kind of just like the big TV where you could only like flip through the channels. And like wrestling came up and it was Alberto Del Rio and Sheamus. And they were doing some storyline where like it seemed like Alberto Del Rio was about to attack Sheamus. And then he started walking to the ring and then turned around and went back. And that was the end of the show. And we were like, and I was like, dude, I want to see them wrestle. I want to see them fight. So I tuned in the next week, and then I just started watching from there. And then, but for it to be like a career, something that I would want to do, it was I always forget which one it was, but there was a WrestleMania that was in Florida, and it had like the roller coasters in the background.
Yes.
And the huge ramp, and it just looked like the coolest thing ever. And I was like, dude, like, could you imagine the feeling that would feel like being able to walk down that ramp? I was like, that would be really cool. So then that's when I decided I would want to try it out.
Yeah, I mean that was the one where the Hardy Boys they made their triumphant return, and it was the coolest of scenarios. Everybody expected like the New Day to be like the mystery team, and I mean that's what I love, right? When pro wrestling is like legitimate, right? Where you can suspend, the audience's disbelief because they had just wrestled on a Ring of Honor show the night before. Like, for the tag team championships, right? Against, I want to say like the Young Bucks, which when you think about it now, it's just kind of crazy, right? But they dropped the titles to the Young Bucks, I believe, at the Ring of Honor show. And, but I mean, it was a hellacious war. Again, it was tables, ladders, and chairs, the very thing that the Hardys are known for.
Yeah.
And to do it again the second night at their age, and they are two that, I mean, everybody now kind of gives like backyard wrestling a bad name, so to speak, right? Like, but for them, they made good of it, right? Where, hell, CM Punk was a, backyard wrestler, but, at some point he became, like he wanted to learn more, right? To actually take a bump rather than just like hit your friends with the chair and just gig, like that stuff, right? Like they wanted to learn the art, right? That's what, any great artist does. You go, if you're an actor, you go to Juilliard. Like you might want to act in high school, but you go to Juilliard or Harvard School of Music, in the conservatory, if you're a musician. But that's it, and that's that. I find it fun that like you weren't a fan, but then because training involves some monetary, right? So you actually not being a fan, and you like maybe this could be a career choice, and I'm going to plunk her down some cash and an investment of my future, and it's something that you're still continuing to do today with the Lucha Homies Wrestling School. But I mean, what was it that made you turn to actually want to become a professional wrestler?
Well, so do you know Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a huge Gary Vaynerchuk fan. I've been listening to his stuff like since I was in middle school, like 7th grade. So like before he was really mainstream, So he had some video that was like, you don't want to chase money, you don't want to chase like fame, but you should chase like a feeling, right? Like So then that was that same day where we watched that WrestleMania, and I was like, if I were to chase a feeling, that would be the coolest feeling that like you could get. So we're chasing feelings, we're not chasing money, chasing fame. I think I've told a lot of people that when I'm asked about like my goal in wrestling, like what I want to do, like I don't have a specific like company. I don't have like a specific thing. Like I want to win this title, and this title. I want to wrestle for this company or that company. I think that I want just to have enough influence in order to like just make a kid's day by like saying hi to them. You know what I mean? Like if I get to a certain point where I could be recognized on the street by like a kid and I could be like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Like, what's your name? They're like, oh my gosh, like that made my day. That's what I want to try to do.
I love it. I love it. And again, if everybody, chase the feeling, because I think the euphemism now, right, is like in my feelings, right? And it's a negative connotation, right? But, to chase your feelings, right? And, to basically kind of get yourself in a state of mind, right? Like a state of belonging, right? The fact that you want to feel, how that feels, but not for yourself, not selfishly, so you could have some sort of like, notoriety and whatever to make somebody else's day. I think that's like very noble.
Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. So yeah, then I started training and just been having matches lately. I had a show that's scheduled for next Friday, right, the day after Thanksgiving, called Canna Pro, but that just got canceled. And then in the house the next day, on the Saturday the 28th, I'm actually scheduled to wrestle Eli Everfly, which sounds really cool. But we'll see what's going to happen to the show. Right now it's still going on, and hopefully it will, because I've watched Eli's stuff for like a couple years. Like when I started wrestling, I only really knew like WWE stuff, right? I only really knew the mainstream stuff, but then I started watching all the indie stuff, all the Japanese stuff, lucha stuff after I started wrestling. So yeah, that'll be cool. Hopefully it'll still go on. If it doesn't, totally understandable. It's the times we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. But shout out to Sean Black and Compton Mania, because that's a good friend. And man, there's a picture on the Facebook and the Instagrams of like me as a wrestling fan at I think it was like Wrestle Reunion. It was like a wrestling convention that they had at the LAX Marriott, and he was actually doing security. So like you had like Mean Gene Okerlund and Harley Race and Bret Hart and all of these like luminaries and everything, and Sean Black and Mariah Moreno, the Bloodthirsty Vixen, they had just started training at Santino's, right? Wow. Yeah, and we're all babyface. Like I think it was like 2011, like January 2011, and we're just like all so babyface. It's so fun, but shout out to Sean Black. So whether the show happens or not, definitely support Compton Mania. Because I was at the very first show in Inglewood, and he's got a very good vision in terms of what he wants to bring, and that's why I think it's you're a perfect fit there, because he wants to just better his community. He doesn't want to have he grew up much like me in Inglewood, California, and kind of had dalliances in Compton and Watts and everything like that, and those are places that most people, Inglewood always up to no good if you listen to rap music, and that's kind of like the black eye that society gives it, and he wants to change the tide. He wants to change the perception, and he's doing that with Compton Mania. So I mean, it's an amazing card that it looks like. You, Eli, my friend Jerry Gigolo, who's awesome. Oh, yeah, it's a litany of Southern California luminaries. So regardless if this show happens or not or whatever, definitely follow Compton Mania at all of the social media streams, and you can thank us later.
Let's go. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, sounds really cool. I'm excited. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely gotten not backlash, but I know that I I grew up very privileged, right? I grew up in like a nice neighborhood. I didn't really have to like tangibly like struggle for like a lot, you know, like, and I think that's a big part of why I wanted to join wrestling, because I'm not gonna be able to earn like becoming brave. I wasn't able to earn things because I grew up so privileged. So that's why I wanted to join wrestling, in order to push myself. I'm never gonna. I forgot the exact quote, but it was like, you're never gonna become the best person that you're gonna be if you're just sitting on the couch, right? You gotta go out and do something. So that's a big part. That I know that I grew up very privileged, and I grew up very in a nice household, but I'm trying to get out there and do more. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah.
No, I absolutely, and again, even the fact that you acknowledge that, right? That you might have had a leg up, the common misconception when people are just like, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, that mentality is like that everybody starts in the same starting point, right? And not really acknowledging like people might be a little bit higher, in the race, or a little bit, it's like NASCAR, different pole positions, right? So, it's awesome that you even acknowledge that, and again, you're doing it. Why? You're taking the bumps, you're traveling the miles, you're being bearing witness to the stories, right? Why? Because you want to make other people's lives better. And that right there, like, it doesn't matter, like, what happens, where you came from, or what have you. Like, to me, I just think that speaks of you, the person. And similarly, like, I can think, just in pro wrestling, imagine, like an Eddie Guerrero, like a Natty Neidhart, like these lineages that have, like wrestling through and through, and they have like to some extent in some locker rooms of an advantage, but sometimes, if their uncle, their dad, whatever, pissed off some other promoter, they carry that weight and everything, Brian Pillman Jr., same, right? But, just acknowledging it, and wanting to earn it back. Hell, I mean, I even want to say like uh, Jody Christopherson, right? Chris Christopherson's son, right? Who, I mean, a movie star, a singer. He's like seen it and done it all. I was just watching like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, inductions, virtual one on HBO Max, and I can't remember which band it was, but like this particular band who's getting inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, their first Grammy was given out by Jody's dad, Chris, right?
Oh wow. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so like whatever. And Jody, he had a developmental deal with the WWE. He's wrestling on the independent circuit now, kind of in that APW kind of NorCal, vibe. Same thing with like Clayton Jack, or Cal Jack as he's known. His dad has wins over Dan the Beast Severn, the UFC Hall of Famer, and Dr. Death Steve Williams, who's a legend in Japan. And that's like his dad essentially beat them in amateur wrestling, which again, if you look at Dan the Beast Severn, both pro wrestler and MMA fighter, pro wrestling was his forte. Same thing with Dr. Death Steve Williams, right?
Yeah.
Was running guns with Junkyard Dog and Ted DiBiase in Mid South Wrestling. But again, Clayton Jack, his dad has legit wins over those two guys. So, and he went into wrestling where his dad didn't. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I have two things that can branch off from that. First, like, so my dad's actually he's a ex-professional power lifter. At one point he had the world record for squat, like for the world record. Like, he squatted, I think it was 1118, so like 1,118 pounds. And yeah, so like we grew up with him having like a whole garage full of weights, and kind of in a way that sets a certain bar, you know, like if you grow up and your dad's like a world-class power lifter, you got to do something, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I think he totaled 2,500 at one point where he squatted 1,000, deadlifted 800 something, and then bench 6 something. So he's, yes, it's
What?
crazy. If you want, Scott Haas Cartwright, he had some really crazy lifts, but yeah, so that he has some connections into the wrestling business too, just from being around powerlifting, which we haven't tapped into yet, but
no, for sure. But I mean, that must have been cool on the playground, right? When like everybody's like, my dad is, stronger than your dad. I think you won every argument, right?
Yeah. And then another thing with Jody and Caljack, they're both awesome guys. I've been in locker rooms with them at PPW at Phoenix Pro Wrestling, and then I'm yet to go to an APW show. However, I am scheduled to be on the Young Lions Cup for this year, APW's Young Lions Cup, so that'll be cool. And we have the list. I think they're sending it out soon, but we have the group chat. We know who's in it, so it'll be cool. We're filming it sometime in the next couple weeks, and I'm not sure when it'll be out, but yeah, I'm excited for that.
Go ahead and follow All Pro Wrestling again. The founder, the great Roland Alexander. And it's been a hell of a ride, and I believe Mike Modest is still there. And for those who don't know, that Mike Modest was, one of the reasons why we know APW so so well is because of Beyond the Mat, and Roland basically taking Mike Modest and the shooter Tony Jones to the WWF and trying to make them something, and rest in peace Roland. But APW, go ahead and check them out, All Pro Wrestling, on all of their social medias to see when that Young Lions Cup drops, because I want to see it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of it, because I think like 2 or 3 years ago, Chris Bay won the award, and look at where he is now in just like a couple years. And I think Slade won it the year before. I know Marcus Lewis won it, so it'll be cool. It'll be a cool thing to be a part of.
Absolutely. So the powerlifting deal, right?
Yeah.
You alluded to it. So come on, like obviously, so, in terms of your dad, right? You said you always had weights and a gym around you and what have you. But, like, when did you know, like, my dad is a little bit different than your dad?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I've actually talked about this to my mom, the way that we would be around so, like, insanely strong people when I was way younger, that, like, how much weight that people can lift has been, like, shifted in my mind, like, because we would go to these powerlifting meets with people squatting 800-900 pounds, and they would be like the guys who aren't winning. So then a couple years later, when I would hear somebody be like, "Oh, dude, I lifted 600 pounds," or like something happens, and you're kind of like brainwashed to be like, "That's not that much,"
Do you think that with your dad's influence, like, do you think you would have done sports? Because obviously, you have a hell of a athletic pedigree, but like, do you attribute it all from your dad and his athletic endeavors?
I don't think so. I think like both my parents just wanted us to be active when we were younger, and it stuck with me and my brother. We both did like soccer while growing up, and then stuck with different sports throughout high school. Like my sister, she was in like soccer also, but she just didn't want to stick with it. So yeah, it's cool to be part of a family that likes athleticism and stuff. So yeah.
Now, are there tips that your dad gives you, like nowadays, in terms of like your form, like, what is the biggest critique from dad?
Nothing very specific, I guess, but think you'd say just to like work out, you know. I'm not really on like a certain plan right now. I'm not in like a certain like weightlifting program, but just as long as I'm lifting, you know, he'll call and we'll talk on the phone and he'll be like, "You lifted today, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." Yeah. So yeah.
I absolutely love it. Now, I mean, before we let you go, man, your move set is like almost, I don't want to say like outworldly. It's definitely like within this world, but like, we kind of talked off air. In terms of innovation, like when I saw you on, Primetime Live, the iterations of, and I, John De La O of OCCW and De La O Jiu Jitsu, I talked to you quite a while, right? For about a year, but I like it was just weird. Where I live in like greater Los Angeles County, and I would go out to Orange County to do the Gym Crashers show. So like I never got to actually see you wrestle. So
Yeah.
when I saw you on the United Wrestling Network programming, I was just like, oh, this is what they're talking about. And I saw the moves, and again, the amount of innovation, it reminded me of like the first time I saw Rob Van Dam or AJ Styles or Paul London. It's just like changing the game like crazily. So like I guess who are some of your influences now? And then like how did you develop your ever evolving moveset?
Well, I think a lot of it came from artistic gymnastics. So like in gymnastics, there's those six elements. And when I was first getting into wrestling, I was trying to think of very original moves. So I was thinking of like gymnastics moves that could also be a wrestling move. So the thing that I do where I go where I cast handstand, hit a pirouette, and drop down with the elbow drop, that's a gymnastics move. When you're doing front giants, holding the grips like this, you would do a pirouette that way. And I was like, wait, if I just did that on the ropes instead of on a high bar, that could end up in like an elbow drop. So that's how I came up with that move. This round off back handspring, back elbow is another one that I like to do. And it's basic. That like it's weird because pro wrestling is definitely going in the way of more high flying lately, and I don't want to overdo the flips, because then once you do a certain flips, then next time they're gonna want like another twist, another flip, and then there's a certain level that you just can't do. Yeah, it's I'm trying to make original stuff, something that when they see, they're like, oh, hey, that's cool, that's different. I have a couple other things in the works that I haven't done yet in a match that are fairly original. So I'm looking forward to trying those things. Yeah.
I love it, but I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. In terms of like desensitizing of the audience, right? Where if you do like flip, 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 that's not going to turn out well if you're 30, right? Like Honky Tonk Man famously hasn't taken a bump since he probably left WCW in '97, but he's booked every show. And he just works, but he's not taking it. Even the most simplest flat back bump, he's not taking it. Not at all. Right? So with that all being said, it's just like the best way that I can articulate it or compare it to is the singer from Aha, right? If you've ever listened to that song, "Take on Me," right? It's like like whatever, right? Well, that guy, right? What he did in the '80s, right? As a 20-something-year-old spry, wild-eyed kid, right? In the early 20s. Well, now he's 60. And when people go to concerts, because even though they kind of dropped off here in Europe, where they're from, I think they're from Germany, like they're still huge, right?
Yeah.
So every time Aha performs,
he has to.
They want to hear "Take on Me," and that dude has to hit that note every night, and has to get that note every night for the last 35 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Like yeah, that's a perfect analogy of what it is. You know, you set yourself up a certain way. Audience will expect that, you know. So you don't want to overdo something that you can't do every single night, because everyone deserves to see the best out of you. So yeah.
I love it, my man. But obviously, you've had a lot of. Well, actually, before we wrap this up, but what is your favorite moment in your wrestling career thus far?
Hmm. Favorite moment thus far. Um, a couple of weeks ago at the last OCCW show, I think I would say it was, because it was just a really cool environment. It was an 8-man tag match, and it was, or sorry, not 8-man tag match. It was like an 8-man War Games type match, and it was my first kind of like extreme match. Like there was tables and chairs and kendo sticks, and I had a bunch of my football friends from Chapman there. So I also still play football. So like that's happening also right now. But yeah, they were there, and then Sir Samurai was there at the show, which was awesome because it's been a while since he wrestled last. So I was able to get him booked on the show, which was really cool. So have my trainer there, and then have like my friends there. And I think my mom and sister came down too, just for the weekend. It happened to be at the same time. So that was just a really cool match to be a part of. I got a pin. I hit my shooting star. I hit a pin, 1, 2, 3. Then I got eliminated later, but like, just to get the pin for my friends and my family and my coach right there, that was really cool.
Oh man, yeah, I mean, those are things that there's just that stuff that dreams are made of. So obvious. I mean, that's a pretty cool moment. Your trainer, your friends, your family. Like, I don't think it could be a better situation. So, I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, there's been a litany of people that have helped you get here, both in life and professionally. So
Mhm.
I would like you to take as long as you need, but let's get some acknowledgments and shout outs out of the way to people who have influenced you in your career thus far.
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, it would just be my parents, just supporting me with everything, and my grandma for sure for coming to every event that she can come to. And then like the coaches, Sir Samurai, Scoot Robertson, and Lil Cholo, Mariachi Loco, my newer um all the promoters who would like give me a chance, like, because like they have to trust that I can do something if they're gonna put me on their shows, and I just really really respect it, and I'm glad to not disappoint and try to go out there. So like, just every chance that every promoter, every company that gives me a chance, like, that's a huge thank you. Everything that you do, you gotta thank somebody else for it, right? Because nothing's done by yourself, like literally nothing. Like the shirt that you're wearing was made by something else, that came from something else, that was created by something else. So everything's rooted. Also, like my fellow students who came up, Midas Creed, Harmon Shima, Dante Daring, they're all from NorCal, and they're gonna start getting around too. Like they're doing a lot already, and they're gonna be recognized soon. So yeah, that'll be cool.
I absolutely love it, my man. But dude, thank you for joining us. But obviously, I mean, you're one to watch, right? So for people that want to see what Jack Cartwheel Cartwright is doing, where can they find you on social media?
Well, so my Instagram's Jack Cartwheel. I probably post the most on Instagram. I try to make like a little highlight reel of most of my matches that I have. Then on YouTube, I think it's Jack Cartwright on YouTube, and I'll try to post as many matches as I can. Facebook is Jack Cartwright, and then Twitter's Jack Cartwheel. And I think TikTok's Jack Cartwheel 1. I have a TikTok, and I'm trying to get it big. It's so weird for some people. It's just so easy. They just like blow up, and I'm not there yet, but I'll be there soon. Yeah, those are my socials.
Mikey O'Shea has figured something out. He's kind of
Yeah.
he's kind of thrown a kink in the matrix. So I mean, I'm looking at you, Mikey O'Shea, and the Irish Juggernaut. So we see what we're doing, and we want to know how you're doing it. So just saying. But folks, thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. Thank you, Jack, for joining us and setting time out of your morning to kind of talk with us. And if you haven't already done so, I warmly encourage you to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on both Facebook and YouTube. But I mean, Jack, you're subscribed, right?
Yeah, I think so. I am now.
Damn right. But
When
don't
you
just take,
I hit it.
yeah, damn right. But
Yeah.
don't just take our word for it, folks. Here's another pro wrestler, Zeta Zhang.
Hey, this is